Hello and welcome to this video. My name is David Dawn. In this video I'm going to be going over MySQL, grant and revoke commands. Essentially we're going to show you how to administrate user privileges on a MySQL server. Now, I'm on the assumption that you literally have no idea what I'm talking about right now, and someone has just handed you a MySQL server and said, hey, you've got Eve, Alice and Bob users on this one system and they need to be able to do different types of stuff, which we're going to get into. And you're like, I have no idea, so I'm going to go over to YouTube and I'm going to ask David exactly how to do it. And that's exactly where we are right now. David, how can I give Eve, Alice and Bob different privileges on different databases and tables and so on, so the one can write to the data, the other can only read, the other one can't see it, the other one can't. Basically we're just going to get into all of this. All right, so I'm on a Ubuntu server with MySQL installed. That's really as much as you need to care about here, because all of the commands will literally work on anything else anyway. I'm logged in with root at the moment, so this is going to be a very detailed video, right? And I'm going to go as slow as possible. So I'm logged in with root at the moment, and here is Alice. She has no access to the server because she's a user on this one machine, but she has no access whatsoever. And as you can see here, select user from mysql.user. We'll get into that in a second. You can see there's no Alice, Bob or Eve users on here, which we are going to create. All right, and you can see here we've got Bob's down here, has the same story as Alice, and then we've got Eve down here, also has the same story as Alice and Bob as well. All right, root user obviously has everything, you can do everything. So let's start off with creating a user for Alice, right? And we're going to say that Alice can only access this one server. If I can type slowly enough, Alice is only going to be allowed to access this one server if she is actually logged in onto this one machine. All right, so she can't access it remotely or anything like that. So she literally needs to come into this one machine here and be able to access it. Okay, and we're going to say identified by, and we are going to give it a super strong password of password. And yeah, so now we can do this, and now we have created Alice's accounts now to do this. So let's now come back over to Alice, and we're going to say MySQL -u and -u, and then we're going to say that Alice. So -u is the user that we are wanting to log in as. And then we're going to say host, which we don't need to, but just for the sake of it, we're going to say localhost, all right? And we're going to say -p to say, hey, ask me my password. And then we're going to type in PASSWORD and enter, and boom, there we go. We're now in. And we get the standard welcome message that everyone else gets. So we can just press on a Mac, Control L to, didn't want to do that. Control L just to clear the screen. Now Alice, we can do this once again. 2 3 4 5 6. Oh, wrong password, sorry. Okay, now Alice is logged in, right? And we can say select user once again, and we can see Alice at localhost. Now, if you don't know anything about MySQL, then in order to show how many databases there are on the MySQL server, because that's ultimately what MySQL does, it's a place where databases are. And the way to show which databases you can see as a user, we say show databases. And you can see here, Alice can only see the information and performance _ schema databases, all right, which is basically nothing. She has no privileges. And we can say show grants also. And this says here, grant usage on ** to Alice at. So let's just get into this now. Let's look at the English of this, not look at the MySQL of this, because once you actually comprehend the English part of it, then the MySQL part becomes super easy, because it's MySQL is supposed to be declarative, all right? It's supposed to be easy to understand. So grant is we are giving you. Usage just basically means, hey, you can't do anything, but we're going to give you the bare minimum. I mean, usage means you can't do anything whatsoever. You can only see the most default things that you should be able to see, and that is basically the information and the performance underscore schema databases. And so on means which databases and which tables are we referencing with these one privileges. So the usage at the moment is only one. We could say select, update, delete, and so on in here, comma separated, but at the moment we're not, and we're saying on which databases and which tables. So let's just say that there was a database called numbers, and in one of the numbers database there was a table called decimals. All right, now what this is saying is that if we put in here, in the first star would be numbers, and then decimal, then the actual points here, and then decimals. That would mean that we are granting a privilege on the numbers database, and specifically only the decimals table, and then to the user here. All right, so we're saying Alice at, and the host is super important. All right, and when I first started learning MySQL, it was always the host part that really confused me. And this host part is not relevant to the machine that you are on, as in where the server is actually located. This is relevant to the user from where they are logging on, right? And if we come back out of this again, and we're now logged on this one server, and if we remove the -h localhost, just say -p, and we go password once again, we're still allowed in because the host that got sent was localhost. All right, that's what by default got sent. Now, if we just change this just to show you what the difference is, and if we say the loopback address, and here, and we do it again, we can still get in, right? Because they both mean the same thing, okay? But if we were on another machine, right, and we just say like host name of this machine, the host name of this one machine is Grant Revoke, right? So if we say then, this MySQL here is basically saying which server is this on, right? But because the user, Alice, is on the same machine as the MySQL server, it will work. But if we were on another network or something like that, it wouldn't work, all right? So even though that this host name on here is different to that of the actual machine, it doesn't matter. They've got the same, they're on the same network, they're on the same network interface and so on, exactly the same machine. That's why it's going to work, all right? But if you're on another machine and you only have local host as your host on your user, then you won't be able to access it, all right? Anyway, let's continue with this. So now we can see that Alice only has access to the default databases. And if we say create database Alice underscore DB, access denied for Alice at localhost to this, because one, she's not permitted to do it because she doesn't have any of these permissions. All right, so let's now come back to our root user, and everything that I've just talked about is exactly the same for Bob and Eve as well. So let's now make a database for Alice, all right, as the root user. So we're going to say create database, and we're going to call it Alice DB, all right? And now we can say here and say show databases once again, and you still see that Alice can't see it, right? So we have to find some way of allowing Alice to see it. So what we can do here is by the root user, we can say show grants for Alice, and because there's only one Alice on here, we can just drop the @ sign. And obviously I was wrong there. Okay, so grant usage on star here. So we're seeing what we saw in the beginning. She has got no, or the user Alice has got no privileges whatsoever. All right, so let's now give Alice the select privilege on, and we're going to say Alice underscore DB, and then dot star. There's no tables on there at the moment, so we're just going to say star to Alice at localhost here. Okay, and now if we come back over to here and we see show databases, Alice can now see this one database. All right, and we can say show tables in Alice DB, and we get an empty set because there are no tables in that. All right, so let's just quickly create a table of so we need to declare the database name, and then we'll just call it users here, and let's just say int and then auto increments primary key, and then just say name varchar, not null. Okay, and now if we come back to here, now Alice can see this users table. All right, so let's make this interesting now. Let's now log in as Eve, all right, and see what Eve can see. So we can say MySQL U, and we're going to say Eve, and then a password 1 2 3 4 5 6. Doesn't have a path, doesn't have anything, so Eve can't see anything whatsoever. So let's come back to the root user, and let's now create the user for Eve. So create user, and we're going to say Eve at localhost once again, right? And identified by, obviously identified by, and we're going to say the password once again. It's the same thing, completely useless. But now let's come back to here and here, and now Eve is now logged in, and just for the sake of clarity, let's do select user once again, and we can see we are now Eve at localhost, and we'll say show databases, and Eve can't see the database, and we're going to say select, or we'll say show tables in Alice underscore DB, and she can't see it, so it doesn't matter. So now let's go show grants for Eve, right, at localhost, and she has this now, right? So let's now give Eve also select on Alice DB, and we'll do star to Eve at localhost here, select grant, oh yeah, on Mr. out. There we go. So now we come here again and to Alice, and we'll just see the tables in here, and we can see users once again. Now this kind of defeats the object of Alice having her own database. So let's now we go, oh, we made a mistake, we gave Eve the wrong privileges on definitely the wrong table. She shouldn't have been able to see that one user's table, all right, because that's only for Eve to see. So it's only for Alice to see. So now we need to come and say revoke select on Alice DB dot star to, and we'll say Eve at localhost. My mistake. Sorry. We need to have from here. So it's revoke select on this from this. Oh dear. Okay, I missed a space there. Okay, so now Eve doesn't have this. I'm sorry for making the mistake there. And if we now do show tables in AliceDB once again, and we can see access denied for Eve. Let's just run that again. Access denied for Eve because she doesn't have that access. So let's go ahead and create another table in AliceDB, and we'll say playlists, right? Playlists, and we'll open this up, and let's now say ID, and it's going to be an int and auto increment and primary key also, and then we'll just say name varchar 255 not null, and oops, and that'll do. So now we have this one playlist, and we're like, hey, Alice is like, everyone can see playlists. They can read all of the playlists. So Alice lets us know, allow Eve and also Bob to see. So let's just allow Eve to see this first of all. So we want to say select, grant select, and then on, and then AliceDB dot playlists, yeah, to, and we'll say Eve at localhost here. So let's do this once again. And we're going to come back to show tables in AliceDB from Eve here. And we can now see we've got playlists. And if we come back to Eve's one, and we'll say show tables in AliceDB, you now see that she's got both of these, all right? So let's now insert into Alice, let's just say use AliceDB for the sake of this, speed it up. AliceDB, okay, and insert into playlists, into playlist, then name and values is going to be programming. She likes programming, and yes, oops. Okay, so now we're going to see what Eve can see on this. So we're going to say select, and in this one we're going to say use also AliceDB. And we're going to say select everything from playlists. And now you can see the playlist is there. So now Eve now has the correct permission for this, right? So let's now go ahead and create a user for Bob. So create user and Bob at localhost, and identified by, and once again, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 because it's easier to type. And now we're going to create a database for Bob. So we're going to say create a database Bob DB, right? And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grant all privileges on Bob DB to, and then Bob at localhost. Okay, so now Bob can basically do everything on this on his own database. All right, he can't do grant stuff, but he can do everything else that he needs to do. So we'll just say MySQL user and then Bob, and then dash P 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And he's now logged in, right? I'm going to say show databases, and Bob now has made a mistake there. Okay, so there we go. So now Bob has privileges to do this. So, but let's now show grants, because I think I made a mistake. Show grants to Bob at localhost. I think I gave him the wrong for Bob. Yeah, and we gave him too much, right? Grant all privileges on Bob star, and also this here. All right, so this is the one we need to delete. So revoke all on Alice underscore DB, and then say Bob DB from Bob at localhost. Okay, now if we come back to Bob, he shouldn't have he can't now see Alice's database. All right, this is what we wanted. So now we say show databases on Eve, and Eve can only see on Alice DB, and Alice show databases for Alice, and she can't see Bob's either. So now let's just to show you what Bob can't do. All right, so we're now going to say grant all on Bob DB and dot star to Alice at localhost. You can see access denied. So Bob can administrate his own database, but he can't grant anyone else any privileges, right? However, he's just asked nicely the root user and said, oh, please, can I do this? And they've gone, well, I trust you. You've been working here for a long time. So now we're going to say grant option, yeah, on Bob DB and star to Bob at localhost. So now we're still restricting what he can do. So now Bob has the grant option too. So we can come back to Bob now. If we move this out of the way, we come back to Bob now and we run it again, right? And now he can do it, right? So we can come to Alice because this is what he gave. He gave grant all on Bob to Alice. And now show databases, right? And now Alice, right? If we look at use Bob DB, all right? And now she can basically like show tables on this. And we can say create table, let's just say other for the sake of this. And we'll say ID, int, and then primary key, whoops, and auto increment. And it's a completely useless table. And then we'll say show tables. So she can create this other, right? And if we come back to Bob again, let's just do this and then come back to Bob again, we can say show tables, and we just say use as well. Let's move this up so you can see properly, and we're going to say use Bob underscore DB, and then we'll say show tables. He can now see that other is there, right? And he could obviously drop table other. He can drop it, and now Alice is like, hey dude, what have you just done? You just dropped my table. And he's like, no, I'm going to create it again. And Bob's like, what are you doing? And he's got show tables. It's still there. So he's like, you know, do I want Alice to have all of these privileges? Maybe select was just maybe all was just a little bit too much. And Bob's like, I'm going to remove this. So he's like, show grants for for Alice at local. Slow down. My typing skills are getting worse. Okay. So we can only do show grants for Alice at localhost from the root user. And we can see here, because we gave it, grant all privileges on Bob.star to Alice, right? And so we want to revoke. So let's say revoke create and drop on Bob underscore DB to this to from Alice at localhost. And now let's show grants again. It's getting a little bit big now. So now we can see that we've got grant select on here, and now we've got grant blah 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 blah, loads of stuff. So it's basically just now given all of the, because we had all before, so now we can see that Alice can select, insert, update, delete, references, index, alter, create temporary tables, lock tables, execute, create view, show view, create routine, but she cannot drop tables. All right, so we now go back to Alice and we'll say show tables once again. And she's got other. She's like, I don't like that table, other. So she's going to drop table other. And she can still do it, right? And Bob's like, what? I just told Root to remove that. And Root's like, yeah, but Alice needs to log out first, right? Until she can do it, and then log back in. So she does it, and then Bob's like, right, well, I need to recreate my table. Let's come back to Bob. And Bob's then like create table, and then Alice other, and create table, and he's got a completely useless table too, and it's going to say primary key and auto increments like here, and show tables now. And we can see Alice other, and Alice is like show tables, and use Bob underscore DB, and we run this once again, and we now see Alice other, and she's like, I don't want this table to show drop table Alice other, and now she gets permission denied. Right now, the thing is that if someone is logged in already and you change their privileges, that person's privileges table doesn't get updated because it's in the memory. The only way to get that person's to do this is you need to kill their process. All right, and that's a different video, but let's just quickly, so you can do show process list. Whoops. And we can see who's got this process, and at the moment Root has got 0, but Eve hasn't done anything for 412 seconds, and Bob and Alice haven't done anything for 54 or 33 seconds. So let's just move this out of the way and come back to Eve once again, or Eve, and we'll just say show databases now, and let's come back here and run this again. And now you can see that Eve is on 4 seconds. So she's been doing something. So in order to be able to have someone's privileges completely updated, they're going to have this process killed, and then it means next time they have to reload their privileges table and so on. So you can see here that by having the different users on the system using the grant privileges. Now, as we saw here, if we say show grants for Alice at localhost, we can now see here that she has grant select, insert, update, delete, references. So let's remove this privilege of create temporary tables. So we're going to say revoke create temporary tables on Bob underscore DB from Alice at localhost. And now if we run show grants once again, we can now see that she doesn't have this create temporary tables, right? And we can remove the let's just type, rather than copying it, let's do lock tables on Bob underscore DB, and all tables as well from Alice at localhost. And we run this once again, and now you can see that auto is gone once again. All right, so this just goes to show you that usage is basically means that it's the opposite. it's the opposite of this, all right? It's just a nice word. It's not saying grant nothing on, but that's what it is saying. It's just not written nothing, but usage says the exact opposite of this. And read only is basically just grant select, all right? And grant update would mean, hey, you can read something and you can update something. Now, grant select, update and delete would mean, hey, you can read it, you can update it, and you can delete it if you want. Now, grant select, insert, update and delete means that you can read it, you can write new data to them, and if you want to update that one data, you can update it, and if you want to delete that data, you can delete it as well. Now, indexes is saying that you can create indexes, all right? And that's, if you don't know what an index is, we're going to leave it for now. And alter means that you can actually alter the table itself. So as our completely useless table, Alice other, that only had one completely useless one column, which was an index. And if you wanted to add another column, say name, then you would be able to do that. Create view, well, create views is a super thing to have, and I love it, and because they're views, they're brilliant. But this really gets into the realm of a little bit more technical, all right? And if you're just a beginner, this is like ignore for the time being, okay? But these are the most important ones you need to understand. Select, insert, update and delete, and drop. Drop is obviously. You also have truncate, but if you want to be able to give read and write access or updatable access, then you want to learn these. So grant, select, grant, insert, grant, update, grant, delete to or on the databases and tables. And you can have more than one rule. You don't just have to have star tables. You could have specific rules for different tables, all right? And you can add as many grants and so on as you want for that one person to make it exactly how you want. So I think I've covered enough stuff in this. I'm going to see the response to this one video, and if I need to do some more things on it, I will, and I'll review it after myself, and maybe I'll do an extended version of this. If you do have any questions, please feel free, obviously, to put them into the comments below, because I'm always interested in what you've got to say, be it negative or positive, or just general stuff, maybe for other people, and so on. But I hope I was detailed enough. I mean, I tried to give some, some like real life examples here, and I don't particularly like just like reading through documentation to show. I read documentation myself, but I like real world examples here are a lot better. Okay, with that said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you go off and have a look at some other videos that I've got about MySQL or MariaDB or server configuration, because that's the next steps for you you want to master something. Mastering stuff is always way better than just having a general idea about how to use stuff. If you're going to have a general idea about how to use stuff, pay someone else to do it. It's cheaper and it's more effective, and definitely security is way more tighter. All right, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. There'll be more than likely a video on the screen right now that either I've recommended to you or YouTube has recommended to you. Thanks then. Goodbye. Ciao, ciao.